Welcome back to another episode of Season 5 of the RAG podcast. As you guys know by now, this is the #1 podcast across the recruitment sector globally. And we've always been on a mission to help recruitment agencies grow by interviewing founders and telling their stories of success from startup all the way to scale up and exit. Well, this season we're a little bit different. How do you, as a recruitment leader and founder, maintain your family and friendships whilst being the best person at work? How do you stay physically fit mentally and emotionally? And how do you find time for yourself in the madness? How do you find time for self-interest, for hobbies, and self-improvement? Well, to help you with this, I'm going to be interviewing someone every single week that can demonstrate experience in one or more of these areas. So I'm going to talk to recruitment founders and also some experts from outside the industry who can deep dive into things like relationships and health and well-being. So sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy today's show. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the RAG podcast. Today, it's early March. The world is in, I don't even know what to say. It's in a bit of turmoil. There's so much going on. Many people are gripped to their news, and there's so much concern in the world with what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. You just can't avoid it. On the positive side, the recruitment market is absolutely flying and does not yet seem to be affected, which is something that I've been looking closely on. Now, today I'm back with another episode, and this is someone who I've wanted to interview since the day I met him, which was only about a month ago. He's an avid listener to the show, a guy called Spencer Knibbe. Now, Spencer is the founder of a company called MBK Search, which is headquartered in New York City, but recently opened up operation in the UK and are soon to open up, or planning to open up in about a year's time in Sydney, Australia, to cater for APAC. What I love about Spencer's story is he did not start in recruitment. He never worked in recruitment, in fact, for anybody else. He used to work for investment management firms like ICAP and Bridgewater, and he became the head of operational risk, or head of risk, looking at the risk portfolio for some of the biggest investment firms and hedge funds on the planet. What happened was, I think it was about in 2013, he decided he wanted to be an entrepreneur, and he set up his own small advisory practice where he was going in and helping firms with their risk management. What happened, though, after 12 months is he was constantly asked by his clients whether he would want to come internally and be a permanent member of staff running their risk practice. And he said over and over again, no, it's not what I want to do. I want to be on the outside. But what I can do is, he naturally started finding people he knew and his contacts and using his black book to bring like-minded people into those organizations. And I don't think he was even charging for it. So in 2014, he decided, I'm basically running my own recruitment firm. Why don't I launch one, having never done it? And then over the last 7 or 8 years or whatever, he's been building this business. Now they're at 13 headcount, but they've got some really exciting growth plans. They work with some of the most impressive investment management firms on the planet. And Spencer's just someone who, I love it because it reminds me of my own story when I left recruitment to go into marketing. I'd never worked in marketing, but I knew recruitment, and I leveraged that and had to build the knowledge base and the people around me for the gaps I had, and he's done the same. And look, I think you're going to love this episode. So Spencer Knibbe in New York City. Let's get going. Without further ado, Spencer, welcome to the RAG podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Really excited to be here.
My pleasure, mate. My pleasure. I feel like, we only met, what was it, about 4 weeks ago we started talking. Yeah, I feel like I know you now. We keep this consistent interaction up. And I think the reason we connected is because you said you liked the show, right? You're a listener.
Oh, yeah. Huge fan of the show. I actually found it just kind of randomly scrolling through recruiting podcasts, trying to hone the craft, as it were. And, saw your podcast. And I thought really what set it aside was the whole kind of business component of it. There's a lot of stuff out there about how to be a good recruiter, best practices, et cetera, but there wasn't much around, what is the experience of the individual as an entrepreneur? What is their story and how they grew their recruitment firm? And so, became kind of a religious listener and actively taking notes and things like that. So it's been super helpful to us and just me as a business owner growing the business. And, learning about who's doing what out there.
Amazing. Well, it's time to pay it forward now, mate. It's time to give your advice out to the sector. So, without I've given you a little intro, but I can never do it justice. So, do me a favor. Tell for those that, especially the UK and globally, that might not know you, give us an overview of who you are and your business.
Sure, absolutely. So, my name is Spencer Knibbe. I am the founder and managing partner with MBK Search. MBK Search, we're a specialized search firm. We focus exclusively in the world of risk, compliance, audit, and cybersecurity. This isn't by chance. I actually spent the first 15, 16 years of my career in the world of risk management. I was the chief risk officer for ICAP in the Americas, so big British interdealer broker firm. Launched a risk program there in the U.S. and ran it, covering U.S., Canada, Central and South America, and then transitioned over to the buy side, where I was an operational risk officer at Bridgewater Associates, where my purview was really the non-trading, non-investment side of the house, so ops, finance, accounting, et cetera, et cetera. And so grew up in this space, had the, unique privilege of being in the, the early years of operational risk as a discipline. But I also always wanted to be a business owner. I always wanted to run my own show, as it were. And so my initial plan was to, leave Bridgewater to start a consulting firm, specifically to work with small to medium-sized asset managers, banks, as they thought through issues of risk management, risk compliance, security, et cetera. The time was right. It was right after the credit crisis. Investors and the public alike were really shining a spotlight on these firms that weren't necessarily publicly traded, and so there was definitely a need there for kind of that outside focus on how to build out their compliance and risk programs. And so that was the first pass at the business, and the business went well for a while, but quickly started to get tapped on the shoulder by clients saying, "Hey, thanks for helping me think about these issues. You've done a good job. Now I need you to come run it." And being the budding entrepreneur that I wasn't about to go back into industry. So I said, can't do that, but I can certainly help you find that person.
So let me stop you there. So
yeah,
right, just to summarize, because that was a lot, right? And there's a lot of amazing detail in there. So just to summarize for people, you were nothing to do with recruitment. You were in risk and compliance management in the banking sector. You then created your own entity to consult back to the sector. And when people wanted you to stay on, that's where this whole idea of a recruitment business came from, I think.
Right. Yep, that's correct. Yeah. Right. So every business, you start, there's always that inflection point, right? There's the, do I continue down this path, or do I pursue this other path, because that other path is potentially more interesting, more lucrative, more scalable, what have you.
So where are you now? So what I want to do is we'll go through that journey, but where are you now? So for people who don't know anything about MBK, just give us the kind of bird's eye view of the company, like how many people, location, that kind of stuff.
Yep. Yeah. So MBK Search, we currently are in the Americas, and we have recently launched a business in the UK to cover both UK and continental Europe. In terms of headcount, we're right at 13 right now. And we are looking to expand the operation in the UK, and then, really within the next year or two, looking to crack into the Asia Pacific market. So the global vision is to have a global brand that follows the sun, that covers our accounts and our core areas of focus.
Wow. And how long has it taken you to get there, from that moment of inflection to now? Well, how long was that?
Sure. That was back in 2014, 2015. And so the first kind of plan was, or the first pass, right, was to A, learn the recruiting business, B, get clients, right, all in a bootstrap type of environment. So those first few years were really just, using my network connections, taking down clients, adding value from that perspective, and just kind of learning by hook or crook how to manage a recruiting business.
Can we? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm stopping and starting you, but there's so much going on in my head, right? So see, it's okay. Siri's going off on my phone. So if we go back to the moment you said you wanted to be an entrepreneur, where do you think that comes from? Like, why do you think that is the case?
You know, my first job out of college was in a venture capital firm. I had the great opportunity to be an investment analyst at a very small venture firm, and I had always been excited by and impressed by the entrepreneurs that I met, just their passion and their commitment to the business. I didn't love the modeling and financial side, but I love the operational business building side. So that's something that always stuck with me, and it's something that I'd always kind of looked to want to do in my career. And to be honest with you, that's why I picked risk versus trading or investment banking, because risk at the time, operational risk in particular, was very much a startup um, thing in the financial markets at 2004, 2005. And so there was a lot of kind of, I call it entrepreneurialism with building
Yeah.
up those functions within those firms. And when I had the chance to go out on my own, I jumped at it.
And your original business, what was that called?
It was called Coin Partners. So coin is an
Oh,
architectural term. It's like a keystone in a building.
right. It's a coin partner.
Yes.
And again, for those that don't quite understand it, how would you describe that business? What were you set out to do in that original
Yeah,
entity?
it was pure play advisory. So it was a portfolio manager or a general partner at a hedge fund would call us up and say, look, I need to figure out compliance. I need to put together a risk register because I have a big investor coming in next week. I need to think about these things because it's important to the marketplace and it's important to running my business in a good way.
Right. Okay. And that would be just you, or did you build a team, or how did that look?
It was classic startup consulting. So it really was just a team of consultants working for me that I would partner with, subject matter experts. So if a client wanted cyber, I had a great cybersecurity partner that I would bring in. So I was the only employee, but at any given time, I could ratchet up a project team pretty
Yeah.
substantially.
Right. And how long did that run for before you said it became apparent people wanted you to be consistently and you started finding people for them?
Yeah. So I left Bridgewater in 2013, end of 2013, was fortunate enough that they kept me on. They were effectively my first client.
Right.
Um, and then started to add on new clients. And I really made the switch to recruiting about a year and a half later in 2015. That was when
Wow.
the writing was really on the wall. Um, and it was interesting because I didn't fall into it lightly. I took a step back and I said, there's actually something here, because I'd been a hiring manager for years and years and years,
Yeah.
and I was always frustrated by kind of that. I saw a gap in the market, right? Then, and the gap in the market was this kind of understanding of what it was I needed. And
Mhm.
internal HR, while great, they're filling hundreds of recs, thousands of recs in many cases. They don't have a lot of time to give you
And
love.
your markets, your area is always going to be one of them as well. That an internal talent team or HR, they're going to
Right,
stay. They're going to be scared by your division, right? They're
right,
going to be like
right.
compliance and risk. We're going to always go external for something like that. I
Yep,
imagine.
yep, exactly. And the external partners, again, while good, I was just so darn picky that, they would give me a little bit of love in the beginning. And if I didn't like what they showed me, they'd kind of move on. And so I saw a big gap in the market for, I'd hired these people. I knew what it was that the hiring managers were looking for. I can go out and find it. And on the candidate side, they would pick up the phone when I called because I was one of them. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I mean, within 6 months, I had some of the biggest firms in the world as my clients. You know, Again, post credit crisis, it was mostly kind of contingency search. I mean, there wasn't a lot of retained or staffing going on, but I feel like starting in the contingency search side of things is great, because it's bare knuckle fist fights. It's just that
Yeah.
nasty side of recruiting that I value, having started there, because it was a great learning opportunity for me.
But it's one of them. Like, how would you explain that feeling when you start the business that you've never done, but you can see because you can see an opportunity. Like, what? How would you describe that kind of big vision but no knowledge? What? How would you, or lack of expertise? How would you explain that? Because I feel like that's exactly my experience with Hoxo, and I'll share mine in a minute. But
Sure,
it's
sure.
it's almost identical.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of fear associated, with it, right? I often explain, running a business and recruiting business is like playing chicken on the highway with a semi. It's kind of whoever balks first, loses. And that's kind of the way it is on a day-to-day basis. And so I think the first thing I did was I tried to surround myself with experts, or, maybe not necessarily direct employees, but people who knew a lot more than I did about recruiting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so it wasn't hard, but I found people who kind of helped advise me in building the business, and then surrounding myself with experts around, actually building the business. Knowing what I don't know, which is and will always be, a lot, and just trying to supplant that knowledge with people who were smarter than I was. And I think that was kind of the biggest thing. And then just a lot of it is trial by fire. I mean, let's face it, there's a pretty low barrier of entry to getting into contingency search recruiting. It's basically an internet connection, a cell phone, and
Yeah.
a laptop, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it was a lot of just having a fresh perspective to running things, and approaching it that way. And the other thing I will say too is that I was also a big early buyer of tech. So my thing was, look, use technology to scale what it is I'm doing, put all my commissions back into buying, LinkedIn recruiter packages, buying a proper ATS, um, being one of the first adopters of AI sourcing technology, things like that. And so my goal was to always scale, the volume and production that our recruiters would have. And so the goal is to say, hey, I got a person in a seat. They need to be 3x more productive than your standard kind of recruitment body shop firm.
Wow. I mean, if I look back at my experience, it was similar. Like, worked in the industry, knew it inside out. Actually, hadn't worked in marketing, but knew there was a huge gap,
Yeah.
and felt I knew this industry well enough to solve that problem, and so had to go and surround myself with people. And it's almost identical. I think the thing is, I felt a bit fearless. Like, there was fear, but I don't think it would have been the same fear had I just carried on doing what I'd always done,
Yep.
because I did not know the pain that was coming. Like, I had no idea the roadblocks that were going to come. So it was almost like I liken it to like a young footballer who gets on the pitch at 18 and just plays without fear, like they're in the street, because you're like, well, I don't even know what the pitfalls are going to be. Whereas in recruitment, back in my day, having done it for so long, if I'd have launched Hoxo, the original plan, which was a recruitment firm, I kind of knew what I was expecting, and I think I'd have done pretty well. But I think knowing some of the challenges ahead was what was putting me off. Whereas in this one, it was like, fuck, the opportunity is massive, but I don't know what could go wrong. So do you think there's any similarities there?
Oh yeah, 1,000%. Right. There's that almost brave naivete,
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
have. And there's also the fact that you've launched something, you're out there, you have no choice but to go forward. I always think about, the landing crafts at D-Day when that door goes down. You ain't staying on that landing craft. You got to go forward. And the
Yeah.
only way you survive is to go through the gunfire, the waves, and climb that damn cliff. And that's really the way I looked at, starting the business. I had no choice but to succeed. So I just did it.
Yeah. What was your life like outside of work when you started the business?
Yeah, life was great. Had two young boys at the time. Obviously, they're getting older now. Married, things like that. That's the side of entrepreneurialism that you don't hear a lot about. It's a sacrifice the families make. When I was at Bridgewater, world's biggest hedge fund, was making good money, right, as you can imagine, and we were saving for our dream home. And it was that conversation with the wife over the kitchen table saying, all right, we got this money, and we got this opportunity to start a business. It's either house or business. And, she had enough faith in me to say, hey, I'll put off, buying our dream home, and let's kind of plow this back into the business. And, a year later, when things are tight and you're waiting on receivables, and, that life saving shrinks down to very little, it's a gut check moment. But that's really kind of the life of building a business. I mean, when you have a family that depends on you, and you're pushing 40 years old, it's hard to start your own thing, and you got to have an extra element of bravery to do that.
Yeah, yeah. I think the age thing, like almost up to 30, you kind of feel comfortable working for other
Yep.
people.
Yep.
I started my business at 30, and I think that was kind of, I would, at the time I just bought a house. I think I was engaged. Was I engaged? No, I got engaged after it. But I knew I was in a relationship no longer, but that I thought that was the kind of long term. We had no kids, and I was like,
Yep.
there's no better time. And yeah, and you say, you're touching 40. There's a hell of a lot of different circumstances. There's so much risk attached to you playing with people. And did you always know if shit hit the fan though, you could go back to consulting and advisory and things in that space, and you'd be okay? Did you feel like you had that safety net?
Yeah, I mean, it was my situation was unique because I had that background, and all my clients were people who would hire me if I needed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I was pretty confident that could happen. But I think if you're going to commit to starting a business, you got to take that backup plan and set it on fire. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just my mentality.
It's not good.
No, it's not, because it holds you back and keeps you from taking the steps that you need to do to be successful.
100%. And look, we did the set. We knew we could always go back to recruiting if and when, but it wasn't what we wanted to do, and we never really thought twice once we started. So, okay, so tell us what in those initial formative years, whether it's 1 or 2 years, what did you struggle with the most, not being from the industry? What parts of the process or the business did you find the most difficult?
Hands down, the most difficult was, meeting the demand. We always had more business than we could possibly fill. And it was just kind of finding that, towing that fine line between, taking on jobs that you're going to be successful at, making the clients happy, but not overcommitting. Right. And so the risk is always going a mile wide and an inch deep. And that was always the challenge. And the other challenge too was just, having enough money to do what we wanted to do, having a family and being a commission only business. We made a decision early on, we're going to bootstrap, and that was it. So we never went out and raised money, never took on any debt. So it was all about just plowing the money back into the business and,
so when did you start
from that standpoint?
When did you start? How long did the business start to feel was like cash flow positive? You were profitable, and you thought, you know what? Now it's time to start bringing other people on this journey with me.
Yep. So cash flow positive was from day one, which is great. In terms of bringing people on, I think, the biggest challenge from a people perspective as a bootstrapper was, okay, do I bring on commission only recruiters? Going to bring on part-time recruiters? Do I partner with other recruiting firms? So I literally tried every model under the sun, in addition to bringing on hourly recruiters or commission recruiters. So I think a lot of it was just fits and starts with what the right model is. And I think we found kind of that right approach now. And believe it or not, a lot of it was just, validated by listening to the RAG podcast and hearing what other folks did in terms of their journey. Right.
I'll take that. The mad thing though, if I go back to my journey though, like in 2015, 16, when me and my business partner, you met him yesterday, when we decided we were definitely going to do this, and it was Hoxo, the recruitment agency, it wasn't a marketing business. One thing in 2015 was I got into podcasts. I started listening. It's the year I stopped drinking so much and partying so much, and I thought, you know what, I was saving for my house, and I knew as soon as I bought the house, the rest of the money was for the business, right? So I started listening to entrepreneurs and to people like life coaches, and I tried to find a recruitment podcast back in 2015, 16, and it didn't exist. I mean, there was a couple of trainers who had like these little like 1 minute clips and things around, and there might have been 1 or 2 out there that I didn't find anything I was remotely interested in, but what I wanted to listen to didn't exist. So when I launched the RAG, it was for myself, really. Like, it was the product I always wanted, which was, if I can't sit there with experienced owners day in, day out, or week in, week out, and especially when you can't tell your current boss you're leaving, which is a massive thing in our industry.
Sure.
Why not listen to the top 100 founders and find out from them? So, I'm really glad it's had that benefit, because that was the whole point.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, immensely beneficial. Yeah. I mean, the content out there back in 2016, 2017 was all, hey, I'm the best recruiter ever. I fill 100%
Yeah.
of my roles and I don't take less than 40% commission. And it's all retained, by the way. And if you're not doing any of those, you suck. And you're only going to do better if you buy my book or you buy my course, right? So that was not helpful at all. Because that's not the reality, man. That's not the way reality is. And so that's what I like about RAG is that it is real. It pitches reality. These business owners struggle with the same things that I have. So it's cathartic in a lot of ways.
I want to mention our sponsor today, which is Talent Ticker. I believe that's a product that Spencer bought off the back of listening to the show. And Talent Ticker, I'm hearing some unbelievable things in the market because if you don't know, they're designed to save you time and specifically help recruiters get ahead with things like understanding where to spend their time. So it gives you things like predictive intelligence of the types of companies that are ready to hire, the types of companies that are taking investment. It gives you a candidate database of over 600 million profiles, and it integrates with your recruitment CRMs like Bullhorn, etc., to make life so much easier. So if you want a tool that will help you call the right person at the right time for the right reason, then you need to get at least a demo with these guys. So go to talentticker.ai and mention that you are a RAG listener. If you look, there's a link in the chat as well, and a link to the show with a specific RAG link, so that you can we can track that you've listened to the show. So I hope you love Talent Ticker as much as my customers do, and I've got no doubt you will. You said you struggled with demand, you started hiring. Tell us about that journey, because you're now not just trying to fill it for yourself. You're trying to bring on others. Did you try and find people with expertise and skills, or did you go down the junior model? What was your route to growing the team?
Yeah, so the first approach was, hey, I can give them the subject matter expertise in our markets. I just need good kind of people with recruiting skills, and that worked well for a while. And layer in a couple juniors, a couple sourcers here and there, but that was the approach. Was I would kind of train them on our areas of risk and audit compliance, and then just get good recruiters that are coming in and banging the phones and emailing and things like that. And that worked great. And then it kind of bumps us into 2019, right? Pre-COVID. And so we'd made the decision I'd always had a vision of that global brand. And I knew there was a lot of opportunity in UK, Asia Pacific. And so we had formed our UK entity at the end of 2019, and we're starting to actively market, into that space and continental Europe. And so the plan was to do it from the US, but then quickly kind of add on a UK partner and build a UK team. And then, COVID hits, right? Beginning of 2020, we still had everything out there, but you get to a point, and this is, I guess, a pro and a con of being a risk manager, is I'd lived through post 9/11. I lived through all the frauds after that. I'd lived through the credit crisis. I'd managed a lot of risk for, big companies dealing with that. And I knew that, once the lockdown started happening, that, things are going to go south really quick. And what was fortunate was our clients didn't necessarily stop things right away. Our markets, we're very fortunate in our markets, because as long as there's laws and bad guys and things break, there's going to be a need for the people that we go out and hire. So in a way, it's a non-cyclical business. Yeah. But again, when things get really bad, like they did in COVID, there's definitely some freezes and things. So we almost had this kind of false screen of security for the bulk of 2020. And then right leading up into the US election, it just dropped off a cliff. I mean, it went from, 50, 60 recs to, less than 10 overnight.
Why?
We're overly exposed to the US, and I think the US financial market was just kind of holding its breath to see what happened with the election. I think COVID was really, really increasing, especially in the States. I mean, the curve was ratcheting up. I think our peak was in January of 2021. So we were right there. Yeah. It was just like this coalescing of, let's just kind of stop and take a pause. And so obviously in the contingency game, we're paid on success, and our roles didn't necessarily go away, but they were all paused, right? So now you have all these expenses, and now you have...
How many people did you have at that? Was it similar to the headcounts to now? Or?
we were pretty small. I want to say we were right around kind of 4 or 5-ish, and a mix of kind of permanent and contractors and hourlies that we had. So that was the gut check moment for sure. And then
How did you handle it?
It was just, you do things that you can do right away to stop the bleeding, stop paying yourself. Do what you can to make sure that everybody else gets paid and gets fed.
Another kitchen table
Yeah,
moment, right?
yeah. That's
remember when I said we'd start earning some real good money this year? Well,
right.
Just so you know, I'm going to stop paying myself.
Right. Yeah, that was pretty rough. The one thing I will say about our business, which obviously wasn't as common back then, is we were always remote. I made that plan pretty early on. Being a bootstrapping, firm is, look, we can do this thing from anywhere, and so we'd always been remote. So the physical office, having overhead, things like that. I've always had a small office to go to every day because I have young kids, and it's good to be able to get out, but everybody else worked remote. So from that perspective, physically we were fine. But yeah, it was a tough time. But it's just one of those things where, like I said, the backup plan has to go into the garbage, and it's you got to do it. There's just no choice. So you just got to do it. And then, I would say right around, very similar to most folks in the industry, right around, February timeframe, jobs started to come back in. We had some really, really good clients who believed in us and trusted us and, gave us a look. We also did a couple things towards the end of, 2020, COVID discounts, we called it, just anything we could to keep out there with clients, new client discounts, things. And so the business really started to take off in first quarter of 2021, and it's really been humming ever since. I mean, our growth has just been unbelievable.
All right, so let's take it then. It's a year ago. We're in the UK goes back into lockdown. January 20. That was the time, wasn't it? The vaccine had just arrived, but it wasn't out there in its masses. The Delta variant, I think it was, or whatever, went crazy globally. So you're sat with 4 or 5 people. You stop paying yourself again, and you're remote. Did you at that point think you'd be where you are now? Did you have that UK expansion plan? Was all that in place?
All that, the UK expansion plan was basically put on hold due to all of that. At that time, I knew we were going to get there. I just didn't know how long it would be. And it was really just more of a, survival mode. I knew how much we had to bring in. Fortunately, the US government had some payroll protection plans and things like that in place for small business, which was good. It was able to kind of, bridge a gap a little bit. But, it was one of those things where you sit back and say, never again. I'm going to put things in place where we need to double down on what we're doing. We need to get to be a big presence. We need to execute on this goal now because, and it seems counterintuitive because it's like you just went through this gut check period. You're not paying yourself, but it's like, you could be a small dog and struggle, and be exposed to the environment, or you can actually build it up to something that's, sizable and can withstand those impacts. And so that was really the decision that we made. And so once things started to pick up, I said, again, just to start to plow everything back in the business. I was able to kind of, cut costs where costs needed to be cut, and we invested where it made sense to invest.
Sounds cool. So when you said the things turned, right? So when was it? About the end of, was it April time or so when things started to really...
I would say it was really around end of February, early March.
So this time last year.
Yeah, this time last year. Yeah. So the other thing too is I step back and look at the organization, and one thing, a common thing that you hear a lot in the RAG podcast is this concept of the founder being the top biller, and then the founder struggling because if you pull away to manage a business and get it to a point where it's going to be successful, there's going to be some suffering from a revenue perspective. So you really need to surround yourself with producers. And so one of the first things I did was actually brought in a partner to, with the global vision in mind, to run the Americas business. And that's an interesting story because he was actually my best customer for 7 years.
Wow. You found another you basically.
Right. And he ran talent acquisition for a very big and successful hedge fund / family office down in the Dallas area. Never been an agency recruiter, but very similar in terms of kind of the background that I had. So now you have a situation where you have me, who was a hiring manager, and my partner, who was actually on the client side, which is interesting. And so for him to profess enough faith in me and what it was that we're trying to do for business, to leave that side to come on with us, was huge. And I'll be forever grateful to him for doing that. So that was really the first thing, is get another partner in place, get him up to a speed where he's a top biller, and then start to build out, the infrastructure, the organization beneath him from that perspective. And then
have you seen that skill set that you had replicating again in terms of success?
I have seen it. I've seen it replicated better than I could have ever done it. It goes back to the thing is, you surround yourself with people that are better than you, and, to see him and what he brings to the table is huge. And every team member that I have, I would put them against me any day, because they're just that dedicated. And that's my philosophy as an organization is, again, I can only go so far, and I need to have people that are, that are stronger than me in place.
Yeah, that's wicked. So by freeing up the Americas lead, that then meant you can focus elsewhere then?
That then meant, yeah. And now the next task was to relaunch the UK plan, which...
Well, by the way, you're the only firm I know that's come the other way around. So when you reached out to me and you're like, yeah, I'm launching the UK, I was like, really? all it is British recruitment firms saying, let's go print money in the US, let's go. And yet you're doing the opposite. But I know, again, you're coming in with a very niche knowledge base that I reckon there's not many recruitment firms in the UK are headed up by someone like you. So I can see why you're not just coming to be another tech recruiter in London, because I'd be like, mate, don't bother, go to Europe, go to somewhere else. But but you're seeing the financial services sector in London or whatever, and you're seeing that there's opportunity to do the same thing, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly. And there's definitely a need with our clients for kind of round the clock coverage. You have US banks with operations in the UK. And that was the plan back in 2019, was like, look, let's just better support our clients in the UK. I'm sick of seeing that business go somewhere else. Let me handle it. And then as I've started to get more into the UK and continental European market, there is a big opportunity from kind of the niche that we offer, and our general focus. And so, at that time I was looking at kind of, the three legs of our stool, right? There's kind of four main stakeholders, right? Candidates aside. So there's three main stakeholders of the recruitment process, right? There's the hiring manager, there's internal HR, then there's a recruiter, the agency recruiter. And so my goal was to find a hardened UK, London agency recruiter who's built the business before and who could kind of take this to the next level for us and be our boots on the ground there. And so I launched did what we do best as recruiters and go out and recruit. I often get, asked by people like, how did you find someone in the UK? I'm like, do you know what it is I do? I'm a recruiter. It's my job to find people. So I recruited a woman named Kelly who's cracking. She is awesome. 17 years experience in the industry, built up a pretty sizable agency business on contingency search and RPO, use case was, very straightforward, looking to go out and do our own thing. Wasn't overly excited about the operational side of it and, the tech and the business side. And that's something we brought to the table. And so convinced her to take the bet on us. And, she started her contract ended the end of January. So she's been with us full time. And then we're just kind of recruiting and building out the staff in the UK as well.
Wow. And has she worked in that risk space? Is that where she's recruited? Or
she had, it was more in the financial services vertical. So she's bringing an industry expertise that, definitely is very similar to and complementary to risk. They do a lot in insolvency, so we're doing a lot there, which we don't necessarily have an entirely similar market in the US. It's kind of a split between, accounting and legal. But but it's just one of those things. From day one, we had a solid list of clients, solid list of people who wanted to do business with us. And that was all with just our core kind of marketing. And it was great for her to be able to come out into a company that had existing clients, and so she didn't have to do any business development work, and really just kind of building it from that perspective. So from day one, we're absolutely washing our face with the UK business, which is great, and expanding to clients in, Germany, Switzerland, doing some stuff in Paris. So really just, continuing to grow and build.
Wow. Because when we first spoke, you were in the UK, weren't you? So where's your spot in England then? What's your location? Is it in London or?
So we have a spot in London. London's a little bit different. Recruiting's a little bit more, kinetic there, face to face. You kind of got to be physically down there. So yeah, we do have a spot in London. It's one of those kind of WeWork type facilities, and that's great from a small business perspective because you can expand and grow as you see fit. For the most part, the team is, they're mostly remote, which is great. That's just what our culture is. But we have that space so they could meet with clients, et cetera. And there's going to be a time when we're going to have, bodies in seats, and obviously the Shoreditch location is where it's at. So
yeah. Do you think that, so in the US, by the way, is it still remote, or do you now, as the new guy, that the head of America, is he bringing people into an office, or how's that going?
We're still remote. I mean, we still have our physical office here outside of New York City. It's kind of some internal discussions that we're going through right now. Whereas, on the management side, there's a lot of, and especially in this recruitment business, there's a huge advantage to having people in a desk format, being able to scream across the room, "Hey, I got a new role. Do you have anybody?" And so that type of thing, I think there's definitely some value left on the table. But then you also have to look at it from the employee standpoint, the talent standpoint. They've proven that they've been able to work successfully from home for the past 2 years. So why are you going to give them a soul-sucking commute in, a situation that's not ideal? And so most of our employees are happy with that. But I think the London model is something that will roll out in the US as well. The physical location, come in when you want. We might have kind of a regular meeting scheduled, and I think it's going to naturally shake out where the employees that want to be around people and kind of have that environment day to day are going to be in day to day. Those that want a little bit more flexibility, we're happy to offer that. Yeah. I'm fine doing that indefinitely.
It is literally, I know it's been, look, recruitment never stops. That was such like a proper phone call. Like that ringtone was such a real phone. Like I don't think I've heard a phone call like that. So, but look, I don't want to go on about the whole hybrid model stuff too much because it's been done. But it is still crazy to think how many firms before lockdown, before COVID, offered no flexibility. Like they used to call it flexi time, where you could come in between like 8 and 9 or something. But now it's standard really that everyone says this kind of come in when you want. I think I've spoken about it before, but it really does depend on the type of business you want, the type of age that you want to hire. I think if you're going for that pure graduate model, you're going to have a lot of office time. You're going to have a lot of training. You have a lot of, they're going to want to be around each other and partying. And whereas if you're slightly more senior, late 20s, early 30s or whatever, people, I think in the risk space and the type of people you're dealing with, it probably helps to have a bit of gray hair or whatever, that you can stand in front of clients and you can have a slightly more, even if it's not about recruitment yet, you can have a more worldly conversation. And so that type of landscape in your business is going to perform fine, I think, with a majority remote. Like if you look at Hoxo, we have, I'd say the average age must be 28, 29 at least, maybe even older. And we've got 37, 38 people. No one works 5 days. There's WeWorks in Cape Town, Joburg, London, and people, the London lot, I think they're meeting today. I don't know. I'll never go down there, so I don't know. But they, I think they're meeting today, and that's how it is. Like we can't go down that grad model. Like if we want to, it's just not going to work. Like if we get 5 graduates, no one's going to be there to train them, and it's not going to fit the rest of the business. They're not going to get through an academy, and then we're all going to be around them. So I think people have to make that decision, and the middle ground is actually quite a tricky place, because if you kind of got to commit to the business you want to build, and that that can, and everyone tells you in recruitment, the only way to grow headcount is through the trainee model. So you're like,
Sure.
have you thought about
Right.
that challenge?
Right. Yeah, I definitely have. And, fortunately, having been at our roots of remote business, we do a lot with technology to leverage that. Everybody's using Slack, but, we're creative in ways we do that. We have virtual training courses, doing things as much from that perspective as we can. But yeah, you're right. Thinking about, because we are moving towards that graduate model. I like that model. I think it makes sense. But we're always going to be the firm that's going to really put, our recruiting associates through a pretty intensive process and hire one or two at a time versus a big class of people, because of who we are, what we do, the clients that we work with. We really want people who are, comfortable in adversity, who are, hard workers, that kind of thing, that can kind of operate on their own pretty quickly. And we find that with the entry levels that we hire, it's like after our first week of training, they're like, I'm sick of this. Just let me recruit. And you know what? I'm like, do it. Fine, do it. Here's a couple jobs, get after it. And it's worked very well for us. And I think from the employee standpoint, it's awesome, because we're giving them more responsibility, than anybody else, and by the way, we're paying a lot more competitively as well. So from a commission standpoint. So
can you share anything about that? How do you remunerate your people?
Yeah. So, made a decision early on. We're not about the desk fee or anything like that, any kind of surcharges. So we take, that's our risk, in addition to basic remuneration and things like that. It really is a plug and play. You plug in, you get access to all of our tech. There's no kickback that needs to happen to the house. And then, in terms of commission, it's definitely graduated by title. So recruiting associates, principals, executive directors, and partners. And, it's really just kind of based on production, but, from a commission split perspective, what I've seen with competitors, it's pretty compelling. So, earnings potential is definitely unlimited.
Yeah. And it should be, right? It should be.
Yeah, of
but
course.
what sort of percentages are we talking people can get? And I'm only asking you because I know there'll be people listening that might want to work for you. So you might as well share it now.
Yeah, look, on the top end of a commission sharing recruitment associate could easily get 20 to 25% of the plate, of their fee, which is pretty solid. And then once you reach a certain point, you can get more, and then obviously that's graduated, principal and an executive director. In addition to that, we also have incentives around, and this is another thing I got from the RAG podcast, competitions. So we're currently doing a competition now where if you get a placement, you get a dinner out. If you get a couple more placements, you get a full night overnight out locally. If you get the grand prize, it's basically tickets for you and your spouse or your partner to go anywhere you want, for 5 days, that kind of thing. So we're really trying to make it an incentive for people. We also have crazy perks like unlimited PTO. We just don't track it. It's just not what we do. It's unlimited. There's none of that here. And again, we also incentivize, business development. And so, you get a percentage of anything you bring in from a client perspective, whether or not you fill that role.
Right.
So it's just, we really encourage people to build their desk and to kind of come into their own. It's not kind of come in and, you got to be a full desk person right away. We're giving all those jobs to the recruiters. You're going to come in from day one and you're going to have, 5 to 10 more if you want it, and you can absolutely handle it. Roles that you'll be working on immediately right away. And I think that's a huge thing too for someone looking to break into the industry, is because, I've heard stories of recruiters starting and it's like, okay, great. We go through this program and now you got to go out and find your client, or now you got to share a job with another recruiter. And, that's just not the way we roll. It's like, hey, come in, boom, we got more than enough work to go around, help us fill it. And, rising tide lifts all boats, right?
Makes sense. So what's your job like now? So you're, talk us through what you actually do, because you talk about giving a lot of vacancies, so you must be involved in some of that. But how do you describe Spencer's role right now? What does a normal day look like for you?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So that's still very much TBD. You know, a thing I often hear about is there's this honeymoon period of recruitment agencies that, up until right around 10, 15 staff, it's great. You can be a top biller, you can be be an owner, you can know everybody on your team. It's a great family and everything. And then there's like that next level of, 20, 30, 40, 50, where maybe you don't necessarily know everybody on a personal basis. You have a distributed team and an organization that is global. You're dealing with different clients. You're not going out and meeting every client. And that's really kind of that evolution that I'm going through right now. Is now we have people bringing in clients that I've never met, working in roles that I'm not necessarily as familiar with. And so that's the first thing. I'm still very much in the production and billing side of the house. But it is more strategic, and it's more looking at, okay, what are some of the products that we want to get into? What services do we want to blow out? We're doing a lot of contingency, but as we grow, we know, it's obvious the value is in the staffing and the RPO side. So looking to build out an RPO business, looking to build out staffing, lay in retained search as we get it. And so really think about offering not only the global coverage, but the 360 coverage.
What do you mean by staffing? Like, what's the difference between
Contract.
staffing and contingency? Oh, right. Contract.
Yeah. Contract. Yeah. So contingency, success fee. And then, the staffing is, interim or temp staff.
Yeah. In the UK, I don't know, the way staffing to me is more high volume temp work, which would not be in your market, putting people in schools, for example. And
gotcha.
Then you have contract, which is more your kind of mid to senior level. Then you have interim, which is your kind of exec level. That's how I would know it. But I get it. So you've got you got your perm contingency, you got your contract desk, you got your recurring revenue, and then you got your RPO, your embedded talent model. That's your kind of classic diamond now, isn't it? Of firms,
right.
And this show is not just about the business, right? I'm fascinated by how people like you grow your businesses and maintain that father-husband relationship, health, well-being. Talk us about the relationship with your wife now. So she took a big gamble on you, and
she
sat over that table. What are you at the point where you can treat her now and be like, you took the right gamble?
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of been the greatest pleasure of this whole thing, is being able to, to reward her for the risk that she took and the confidence she has in me. Again, she's more of the worry where I'm the head in the clouds kind of guy. And I guess you have to be as an entrepreneur, but it's a good balance. And so now we're at the point where she's actually seeing things work out. She's scared, she's almost at that alter ego. It's like, wow, you're 13 employees. How are we going to feed all these people? Shouldn't you be more worried than you are? It's like, it's going to work out,
Yeah.
And I think it's maintaining the balance. It's making sure that you set aside time for yourself, that you stay physically active, that you have a routine in place, because this business, man, can burn you the hell out. There's ups and downs, and it's not for the faint of heart. So I do focus on things like meditation. That's one thing Ray Dalio at Bridgewater really pushed, was meditation. So he paid for everybody to take meditation classes, transcendental meditation. I'm more of the mindful meditation side, but I meditate every day. Big into working out. I was a, college athlete so many years ago. And so that has kind of stayed a big part of my life, is making sure I work out and, I don't want to say eat right, because that would be a lie, but I'm trying better. But, just stay physically fit, right? There's this concept that you hear with, old school bodybuilders. It's like, the iron is my antidepressant, and that's totally true.
Do you know what? So, you may have seen my stuff about running recently, which is like, I got to Christmas, and I'm not a big guy, but I was heaviest I'd weighed on the scale since university, and I was like, I'd just been drinking quite a bit, and I felt like shit. And a friend of mine, so I recently moved back to Sheffield, where I went to university.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is, I went from London to Manchester, and now I'm in Sheffield, which is a city. If you don't know, it's an hour from Manchester. It's 2 hours up from London.
Sure.
It's a bit weird to be back, actually, but I am really happy. One of my best friends at the time was, when I was a PE teacher, he was my colleague, and he's, when I left, I was 24 and I think he was just turned 30, and he was a bit chunkier and he didn't eat very well. And I used to take advice off me. Now we've come back and he's like shredded. He's running double marathons, and I think he's 40, 41, and I'm 35. So it's kind of bang on 10, 11 years. It's 11 years later. And I was like, so he was like, get on board with my running stuff. And I was like, I don't like running. Like, I hate it. I was like, I did a bit in lockdown because there was nothing to do, but I don't like running. But then I got into it. And we did this challenge in January where we said, well, let's run every day without fail. 3 kilometers minimum.
Right.
And so it's not like 2 miles. It's not a long run, right? So I did it. And I did some longer runs. And I think I did about 54 kilometers in the month. And no, that was way more than that. What was it? 3 times 30, about 100 kilometers, I think, in the month. And then second month I got injured at the start, but I got back on it. And then I ran all the way through I was in Dubai for 2 weeks, a couple of days of really big drinking, and still ran the next morning.
Yeah,
and
I saw your post on that. Yeah.
Mate, I am hooked now. Like this morning, 6:15, I'm up, stretching, doing all my phone rolling. I'm out, ran half an hour. Like I think to myself now, I think you can overtrain with running, but the pace I run is so slow. I don't know if you can.
Sure.
It's like my business partner posted a Strava walk. He walked into London during the tube strikes last week from Camden into Shoreditch, and his walk is the same pace as my run. So that says it all, right? I'm a slow runner, but I'm addicted. And do you know what the biggest impact has been on business? Like I feel like we've had a really good start to the year.
Absolutely.
My brain is so clear. I'm so present. I'm so mindful. Whereas last year we had a great year, but there's so many days, especially in December, when I felt like shit and I was not the best version of me. And that, I don't know, when you're a founder of a business, you can't afford it. Like you have to be,
yeah, absolutely. No, I did a post on this in LinkedIn. I think it was this week. It's like, yeah, I mean, I look at, a year ago during COVID, or even a lot of the times in the tough times and found the business, I would wake up, immediately be on my phone, immediately be on email. My day would take control of me. And what I started to do a year ago was like, look, you have to protect your house, and you have to protect your bubble for at least the first couple hours in the morning. Right. So I wake up at 4:30, don't check email, don't check messages. Yeah. Meditate.
Oh, wow.
Meditate, get some kind of workout going, get some coffee, read a book that's going to make me a better person, do 10, 20 pages of that, do what you got to do, get ready for the day. And then the second I step over that threshold to get into my car, get into the office, that's when I pick up the phone, check email, things like that. Been a life changer for me, man. I'll tell you, it's just like, it allows me to control what it is I do during the day. I'm not a big morning workout guy, so I block off, couple hours in the middle of the day to work out, and that's my sacred time. But if I don't do that, I'm not performing the level I need to perform, and the people around me are affected.
What time do you need to go to bed to wake up at 4:30?
You know what? I'm old and decrepit, so I need to be in bed around 9:30, man. I can't be going out doing late nights drinking or anything like that anymore.
No, well, I'm I definitely like a drink every now and again. I'm going to South Africa in 3 weeks to meet my team for the first time.
Oh, nice.
So me and it's funny though, because Hoxell's 5-year birthday was last week, so 4th of March. Thanks, mate. It was really, it was crazy. It kind of just came upon us, and we were like, "Fuck," because we had a 10-year plan when we started this. We said, when we're 30, we'll start, and when we're 40, we'll finish, and then we'll hopefully be, financially free. And whether we exit or what, who knows? But we said by 40, we don't have to work. We will still want to work, and I think we're still on track. But to get to the halfway point is a bit crazy. Like how fast it's gone. It's gone like my hair went grey. That pace, it's nuts. But yeah. So we booked our flights, and my people manager, operations manager, booked the flights. And then we decided, because we're in Cape Town for the first time, we're meeting all of our South African team for the first time.
Yeah.
Why don't we do our 5-year anniversary when we get there, and then the UK can do a party? Because we normally do like the Christmas party, and we're all in the UK, and we're on the screen. We're going to flip the script this time. We'll be on the Safa side. Nice. So I can't. Okay. But she's booked the party starts 3 hours after we land on an overnight flight. So I'm like, I'm at a wedding the day before. So I'm at a wedding all day on the Wednesday. Thursday, I'm going to be hungover. I'm going to go down to London. I'm going to get to Heathrow. I'm going to sleep overnight, hopefully. And then I'm going to land, and then we're out again. So
Do it again.
Yeah, for somebody who doesn't go out very often, it's going to be wicked. But I'm a little bit apprehensive. I feel old.
You'll power through, buddy. You'll power through.
Yeah, I'll make it. So going back to you, right? So you said, you're able to treat your wife more. Things are stable. You're growing internationally now. You're keeping yourself mentally and physically fit, and you've got a routine. Do you think, like, we've not spoke about your children? How old are your kids, by the way?
So my kids are 12 and 9 right now.
So what do you think?
Still pretty young.
Have they ever spoke to you about, like, where you're going and entrepreneurship? Do you think there's any interest there that they might follow your path in the future?
Yeah, that's definitely something I try to instill in them is, doing your own thing, being independent, creating wealth from nothing, which I think is awesome. And so it's just, for example, one of my kids wanted they both wanted a Nintendo Switch. And I said, look, I'm not gonna buy it for you. I can buy it for you. I can buy many of them for you, but you're gonna earn it yourself. So you're gonna go out and do what you got to do to earn it. And man, I'll tell you, they earned every dime of it. And it was one of my proudest moments as a parent. Is like, an 8-year-old at the time goes out and earns, $200. I mean, an 8-year-old thinks, a dollar's all the money in the world, and the fact that he earned 200 of them is awesome. And it was just
how did they do it? What did they do?
That generous grandparents who would pay him, a very, very fair wage for, say, raking leaves or something.
Yeah.
But they did chores around the house, and they did other things that they needed to do to make money, which was awesome. So I mean, in theory, it was our money, but at least they earned it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, but that's what it's about, right? Creating a
right.
safe place to go out and learn to do something, and you get something in return. Otherwise,
right?
Otherwise, you don't value money. You just think it's a given.
Right. Exactly. And what I tell them, when they ask me what daddy does, and it's a deeper point because it's what's kept me in recruiting for so long, is that you really are changing people's lives. You're helping make people's lives better. And I know that sounds a little corny and sappy, but it's absolutely true. If you look at, the top 3 events that somebody could have in their life, right? It's, having a kid, there's death, and then there's changing jobs, maybe getting married's up there as well for some people. But, making people's lives materially better. And that's certainly not lost on me every day. And I think that's something that keeps motivating me, and certainly motivating the team every day as we go in. So to hear my sons describe what it is I do, they're like, oh, daddy helps people find jobs and feed their families. That's pretty cool to hear.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And the thing about what I love about this industry is that you don't need to come from, you don't need to, there's no background that says you can't do it or you can do it. Like, you've come from a risk background. I came from a teaching background. Like, there's so many different ways. Graduates, it's all about, are you a people person? Do you understand how humans think? I always say, recruitment's about putting 2 people in a room before they're in the room and seeing it there first, and thinking, right, this is obviously this has got to be a paper match in terms of skill sets and experience, but the true skill set is going, they're gonna work. It's like that. I think I've put together some relationships in my life. I've put, like, males and females together and gone, oh, you should meet. Or I've found loads of my friends' jobs with people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it came I was doing that before recruitment. It was a natural thing for me to go, you're going to get on with that guy. You should meet that guy. You should know that person. You thought about doing that. So I think, that's probably a bit, I don't know if you can teach that bit. That's the bit that I think when you really get it, it's amazing, really.
Right. And there's certain core, if I look at, who we hire, we look at people based on, values, abilities, and skills, right? So there's values. You can't train values. You have to have integrity. There's things that are core of who you are, right? Values is values, right? There's the skills. Those are the things you can train, right? Which is how to use LinkedIn or your ATS, how to recruit, et cetera. And then there's the abilities, right? And it's the gritty things like working hard. It's dealing with failure. It's the resilience. Those are the things you can't necessarily coach right away, or it takes time to coach. And I think when looking at recruiters that you bring onto the business, you really kind of target, values is obviously given, but really look in the abilities and saying, okay, what about your background can demonstrate that you can do the job of a recruiter successfully, right? And we hired somebody in the UK, as a matter of fact, what always impressed me about his background is he did have a little bit of audit, which was great. But when he was out of work, he was working in an Amazon warehouse. You know what I mean? He wasn't just living on, mommy and daddy's dime. He was out there busting his hump, doing what it needed to do to work. And that to me shows grittiness. That to me shows resilience. And just someone who's just willing to get his hands dirty. And I was like, done, you're hired. I actually wasn't even planning on making a hire. But when I saw that and talked to him with some of that background, it wasn't a question in my mind.
No. Makes sense, man. What's the vision then? So if we just take a step back and say, right, where are we heading, MBK Search? What's the plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So plan is to obviously geographic expansion, continue to increase our footprint in the EMEA region, get involved in Asia Pacific. Obviously they're not easy. Nothing's easy in this business, right? But the logical choice is going to be, Sydney, Australia, and then kind of look to that as our home base for that region. And then just really hone and continue to refine our solution suite for the clients with that end game of follow the sun, 360-degree coverage for what you need from a talent perspective. That's really what I'm looking at. So we've built out the management team. There's probably going to be one or two other people on the management side, someone to run EMEA or APAC, someone to run the RPO, and then really just kind of build out the team of really good, solid recruiters, that are entrepreneurial and want to build their business and want to be with us, long term.
And so that's the time zone from Sydney to New York's big, because I'm currently coaching so many people in Australia, and right now it's 11 hours for me, so that's 16 hours for you. So how are you going to manage that? Like that, are you going to travel there a lot? Is it always going to be remote? How do you see yourself being present with that business and adding value?
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's definitely going to be some, there's going to be a need to look at my schedule and maximize that to provide as much support as I can. But also a lot of it is just on finding someone that I can trust. This isn't a decision to be taken lightly. And so it's, as you get down that path, the question is, do you send a very strong junior person over there and give them a shot? Or do you go and do what I did in the UK and just find an absolute, cracker, get on with it, And so I think it's just really finding someone that I deeply trust, because you can't, be a global managing partner and not trust the people that are working for you. And so that's really the challenge, is finding the right person. So that's going to be the biggest thing I'm focusing on.
Have you got a timeline in your head for that person to be on board?
In a perfect world, mate, it's probably, early 2023.
Right. So embed the UK this year, then look at going again.
Correct. Right. And that's the thing, man, is, you could, and that's the other thing about entrepreneurialism, running a business. It's not just for our world, is you could either think about it forever or you can just do it and figure it out. And that's the biggest lesson I've learned over the past year, is just freaking do it. Put a stake in the sand, figure it out. Like Facebook says, run fast and run hard and break things. That's what being a business owner is about. I could think all day long about, launching in Australia and do all kinds of analysis, but at the end of the day, you just got to freaking do it. And so that's my philosophy, and we'll figure it out.
I like it. That was my motto has always been, we'll work it out, right? That's one of our values, because when I was going traveling when I was 24, me and my business partner every weekend would go out drinking, and we didn't have any money, right? We literally, we'd saved nothing for this around the world trip we were going on. And every Saturday night, we'd be like, we really shouldn't go out this week. And we'd always go, we'll work it out. And when we got to the point of going, and honestly, October 30th, 2010, I'm flying to India with no money. I had no money. I was waiting on a payment from the school I work for, £2,000, and I got an overdraft out. So I had £4,000 for an endless trip. And I think I had to borrow a bit of money off family or with one of my friends to give me back. But it was like, we nearly didn't make it. But then when we started Hoxo, and every time something shit's hit the fan, it's always been, we'll work it out. COVID, we'll work it out. And I completely agree. I think if you're not embarrassed by the first version of what you do anyway, you're like, you started too late. Like, you know,
Thousands.
if you look back and go, that was a bit cringy, that wasn't the best, but at least you did it, and at least you learn and you burn. Whereas so many people sit there waiting. It's the same with content, right? And I know we've got to finish in a minute, but when it comes to content, I'm a big believer that you can't learn and get better without posting. So if you put stuff out there that's not great, that's okay. That's part of the journey. I get people on my academy who are like, you know, I posted my first post and I expected way more, and I'm like, why? Like, you've never done this. It's like going to the gym and training and looking at yourself in the mirror and going, I expected a lot more today. It's like you're not. Right. It's not how it works. But the more you do it, the more you learn, the more mistakes you make, the better you'll be, and it's just part of the journey. So, I love your attitude, and I completely concur with it. What I've got to wrap this up now, but Spencer, if anyone is listening and is interested in this journey you're on, either whether APAC or UK, you know, what's the best way to get hold of you?
Yeah, you know, direct message me on LinkedIn. I can also share my email, but feel free to reach out anytime, day or night. I'm happy to pay it forward, and I always love sharing best practices and exploring new opportunities. So I'm here for anybody who wants to reach out.
Just work out what time 4:30 is in New York, and you can always get hold of him, right? The guy doesn't sleep.
Exactly,
the guy does not sleep. The guy does not sleep.
Well, I have the widgets on the phone. That's been a lifesaver for me.
Well, Spencer, look, we're going to get you back on. Without a doubt, we're going to have you back on the show again in, I'd say, about 12 months' time. Let's get you back on. Let's see how this first year in the UK has gone, and let's see if you are in a position to move to Australia, okay?
Sweet, man. Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it too. Thank you, as always, for listening to today's show. I truly, truly hope that you got value from it. That's the only reason I take time every week, is to ensure that my audience, future and existing recruitment owners, are learning from each other to make this industry that I love so much stronger. Today's episode was brought to you by Hoxo Media. I am the CEO and founder of Hoxo Media, and we are the world's leading content marketing and personal branding agency for recruitment businesses specifically. So we are working with over 200 agencies and 2,000 recruiters right now, both managing the brands, producing content, building written, video, podcast content for niche recruitment agencies all over the world, as well as coaching at a desk level individual recruiters in your businesses how to be better on LinkedIn. That's how to brand themselves. That's how to produce content. That's how to use the opportunity on LinkedIn to get traffic to their profiles and turn that into business. We're coaching people all over the world every single day. If any of that sounds of interest, please do visit www.hoxomedia.com or drop me, Sean Anderson, a personal message on LinkedIn. I would love to talk to you. Tune in again next week. That's live on LinkedIn. I'll see you soon.